It's always intriguing when an unidentified creature washes up on shore and then the carcass goes missing. And it's doubly intriguing when it happens twice, in the same place. And when that place just happens to be close to a high-security government lab, well, just watch. July 2020, Montauk, New York. A young couple is walking on the beach. It's midday, and the two are searching for driftwood on the shore.
They noticed some sort of odd smell in the air. As they got closer, they realized there was a dead animal washed up on the beach. Something that definitely does not look normal.
Take a closer look at the dead, decomposing creature of unknown origin.
Its body is bloated, the skin is all tan from probably floating around in the ocean for a couple days, and can you imagine the stench?
The carcass is highly reminiscent of another famous find nearby, the so-called Montauk Monster.
News headlines were made around the world in July of 2008 when a bizarre creature washed up on the shores of Ditch Plains.
Everyone had a theory about the 2008 photos. Some wondered if the creature was a turtle without its shell. Some speculated it was a pit bull that had been beaten in an underground dogfight, or a dead raccoon whose hair had come out in the ocean. And what was up with that apparent beak? Might this be something unnatural?
Almost immediately, online conspiracy theories began to circulate that this creature was actually from Plum Island, which is the center of a disease research facility maintained by the United States government.
A 1971 New York Times article described the facility as a devil's island for the deadliest animal disease germs known to man. And the debunked conspiracy theory claimed it was the source of Lyme disease. Adding to the mystery, the rotten corpse disappeared before it could be analyzed.
Well, of course people are gonna connect the dots. This thing has to be from that thing, because I don't know what this is and I don't know what that is, therefore they're probably related.
During the Cold War, Plum Island was the site of a secret biological weapons program targeting livestock. It's currently run by the Department of Homeland Security. So what to make of this recent grisly discovery? The Montauk Monster of 2020? We showed the photos to our experts.
This animal at first glance might seem abnormal.
Marine biologist Dr. Shay Conger considers the Plum Island theory. She says neither of the two Montauk monsters look like mutants.
I can tell that this animal isn't some sort of deformed creature because it has every typical aspect of the skeletal structure of a mammal.
So could it be a sea creature of some kind? Wildlife biologist Lucy Eckersley takes a closer look.
You can see it's got all four limbs attached and a thin tail.
That says mammal, and she sees hands, which means it's a land creature.
From what I can see from these pictures, it looks like an animal that walks on all fours. Maybe it could climb trees as well. It could probably grasp things with its forelimbs. But it also looks quite stocky and round, so I wouldn't necessarily think it was a fast-moving predator that runs after its prey.
That rules out a canine like a pit bull.
The characteristics that I see here, including the teeth, as well as the body structure, and in particular the small front paws that seem to have very thin, flexible fingers. This is relatively easy to identify as a raccoon.
That's a raccoon? Experts say yes, and the original Montauk Monster might have been one too. And that beak? Likely the decomposing bones and cartilage of a snout.
Some of the fur is missing, but most of the muscles are still intact. Many animals, if you take away their fur, look very, very different.
Lucy has a point. Check out this creature. Can you name it? Turns out it's a hairless bear.
And so an animal like a raccoon, if you take away its fluffy tail, it's going to look quite unusual. So I don't blame these people for not being sure what this is.
You know, it never helps matters when the corpses of these animals go missing, fueling talk of conspiracy. But in this case, we can tell a lot from the creature's body structure, teeth, and claws. Our verdict? This is the carcass of a raccoon. September 2020. Jeannie Wilson of Taylorsville, North Carolina is cleaning up after game night with family and friends. She heads into her sunroom where she comes across a modern-day monster. She records this video of a foot-long snake slithering around the bottom of a 5-gallon container with 2 heads. Based on the video, the snake's heads appear to be working independently of each other. Jeannie was nearly shocked out of her skin.
I spotted him in the corner of the sunroom. I thought somebody had stepped on his head and mashed it. And I looked really close and I said, "You've got 2 heads," and it's like, wow, for a 2-headed snake to make it that long out in the wild is amazing.
Field researcher Cliff Barrickman believes that animals like this 2-headed serpent may have been the original inspiration for many of the world's most fearsome mythical monsters.
Probably the only thing scarier than a snake might be a 2-headed snake. If we look back into ancient times, you can find stories of multi-headed animals, like the multi-headed dog Carabas that guarded the gates of hell, or the Hydra, the many-headed snake monster. And I think that behind these sorts of stories is always a grain of truth.
Field researcher Ken Gerhard lays out a more sinister idea. Warning, these images could be disturbing.
I'm thinking of a Russian scientist who is able to successfully attach the head of a dog to another dog.
That would be Dr. Vladimir Demikhov, a pioneering Russian surgeon who transplanted one dog's head onto the neck of another dog back in 1968. The conjoined animals survived for 38 days.
So we can't rule out the possibility that this 2-headed snake could be the result of a similar type of experimentation.
Sadly, about 3/4 of all conjoined twins die before, during, or soon after birth. So how did the snake get this way, and how did it survive? Is this fantastic beast unnaturally lucky, or is it a bit too fantastic? First, we brought the video to Roxy Furman to assess the authenticity.
I've seen conjoined twins before of various different other species, but my initial instinct was, is this head real or not? And up until kind of halfway through, this second head is not kind of using its tongue to smell the environment. But then there was a point where the second head, its tongue comes out, and at this point you can see it's kind of wanting to move in a different direction, which then made me think this is real.
Furman says these 2-headed creatures are examples of a natural but mysterious mutation called polycephaly.
There's a lot that we still don't understand about conjoined twins. If there are 2 heads, both which have their own consciousness, then who kind of overrides the control of the body, or whether they communicate with one another as 2 individuals would.
Furman refutes the idea that this multi-headed snake could be the product of human experimentation, similar to that of Soviet scientists in the 1950s.
There's no indication of recent surgery, there's no stitches or suture marks.
So it's a real, natural-born snake. But what explains its mutation and its survival?
It seems to be doing pretty well. This is unique because we don't often see animals with 2 heads that seem to be healthy, because they don't tend to survive in the wild.
And while Conger is positive the snake isn't some bizarre experiment, she says the genetic mutation we see here may still have been caused by humans, just not intentionally.
Amphibians and reptiles, like snakes, are actually just really prone to mutation. And a lot of this has to do with environmental pollution. It's been shown that there's a number of pollutants that can actually cause malformations in wildlife, and we're seeing this increasingly today.
So, our verdict. This snake was an example of polycephaly, quite possibly caused by pollution. What became of it is this story's happy ending. Jeannie gave the snake to a friend, and here's his update. He says he named the serpent Double Trouble and says he's alive and well.
When Double Trouble was found, he was already a few months old, so he had a good start. He's approaching a year old, and he's never refused a meal. He's just been thriving, and that's a sign that he's gonna make it and possibly live to adulthood. I always wanted a 2-headed snake, so it was kind of like a dream come true, and I've loved working with him ever since.
In February 2021, a fisherman named Abdullah Nurin in Indonesia's East Nusa Tenggara province pulls in a shocking haul. He takes it home and records this video. The footage shows a deceased baby shark with eerily human-like facial features propped up on a sofa. The strange creature is about the size of a human hand and appears to have a wide, gaping mouth, big round eyes, and a human-like look of surprise.
We've heard of deformities in all species, really, but this is quite unnerving.
Perhaps radioactivity is a factor here. In February 2020, high contamination levels were detected near an Indonesian nuclear research facility in Serpong.
Chernobyl had marked increases in their gene mutation and deformities of animal and plant life. So the mutant shark, I could see that being the result of excess radiation and nuclear waste.
A quick warning that some viewers might find the following images disturbing. In 1990, around 400 deformed animals were born in Chernobyl. Most deformities were so severe the animals only lived a few hours. Examples of defects included facial malformations, extra appendages, abnormal coloring, and reduced size. So what exactly is going on in the waters of Indonesia that created that strange shark? Is it nuclear radiation? Or is there a more natural explanation? We'll turn it over to our experts to decide. Biologist Dr. Floyd Hayes begins his analysis by trying to determine if the human-faced shark is even real.
It has an unusually large and wide head. The eyes do not look like normal eyes. And you can also see a very unnatural-looking line at the bottom, and it looks like a mask that has been placed over the head of a normal shark.
However, our zoologist, Roxy Furman, respectfully disagrees.
The texture of its skin looks very real to me. It would be very hard to recreate something this well, I think, without noticing any flaws in texture.
But Furman and Dr. Hayes can agree on what wasn't the cause of this oddity.
There's been nuclear waste dumping in the region, which can cause mutations in animals. But if it was something that had been a mutation as a result of radiation or something, you'd expect to see lumps across the skin or other indications of deformities rather than just what we're seeing in this video.
See the twisted and gnarled limbs of the stillborn piglet from Chernobyl? This is what Furman is talking about. It's caused by damaged or broken DNA molecules which produce the mutation. Mutated DNA can also result in tumors. If a mutation occurs in an egg, it can result in a non-viable embryo or one with serious birth defects. So if it's not nuclear radiation causing these deformities, then what is? Could the shark simply be too young?
This is a result of overfishing. It's a result of bycatch. It looks like a real animal to me. It's just premature. So we're seeing an animal here that's not yet fully formed, something that's not had the full phase of development.
Marine biologist Dr. Shay Conger disagrees. She points out that a premature shark would look scrawny and malnourished. Instead, she thinks it suffers from a rare malady.
This looks to me very typical of something called cyclopia. That's where the brainstem doesn't develop normally. We'll often see deformities around the head area because organs like our eyes are really directly connected to our brain itself.
Cyclopia gets its name from the Cyclops, the one-eyed monster from Greek mythology. It occurs in roughly 1 in every 250 embryos, often resulting in stillbirth. In this case, Conger says that's why this shark's eyes are on the underside of the head instead of on top where they should be. She agrees with Furman that people are to blame, but in this case, the problem isn't overfishing, it's overdumping.
Your everyday pollution from things like plastics or industrial runoff are much more common in the ocean and very readily cause these types of defects. I would say this shark is just subject to a type of normal pollution that resulted in it not dividing normally and ending up in this type of condition.
So we have a broad divergence of opinion here. Our experts aren't even unanimous about whether this thing was real. We're going to rely on our marine biologist here. She specializes in this stuff. Our verdict? We're looking at a birth defect caused by pollution. Sadly, given how badly we're trashing our oceans, that just makes the most sense. May 2021, Saskatchewan, Canada. 2 female security guards are working a 12-hour night shift on a Cree First Nation reserve when they discover they are not alone. The footage shared to TikTok shows a grassy slope beside a parking lot as a robotic voice, a TikTok staple, narrates the user's comment.
when we work night security 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. and we see something coming at us at midnight.
It's difficult to make out, but it appears to be a nearly translucent humanoid figure walking towards the security guards. The figure seems to blend in with the tall grass and has no identifying features. As it gets closer to the car, the camera suddenly turns away and the video cuts out. The footage triggers a frenzy of speculation on TikTok. One of the most popular theories is that the security guards have had an encounter with something called a skinwalker.
In Native American folklore, and specifically in the Navajo traditions, we hear references to beings known as skinwalkers. And these are shamans or practitioners of dark magic that are shapeshifters, that are able to transform from a human into any type of animal. Typically, it's for malevolent reasons.
In fact, in 1878, the hysteria over skinwalkers culminated in the Navajo witch purge, when 40 suspected witches were killed to restore harmony and balance to the tribe.
These skinwalkers are greatly feared by the Navajo. In fact, it is forbidden to mention the name because it is bad luck and will cause doom to those that mention that name.
There may also be a reason why this creature chose these security guards.
There are theories that these skinwalkers are drawn to certain individuals. The premise behind this is to lure unsuspecting victims deep into the wilderness and to cause them harm, or to assimilate them into skinwalkers themselves.
Since October 2020 alone, hundreds of videos with the hashtag Skinwalker have been posted to TikTok, accounting for 39 million views. So could this meteoric rise in Skinwalker videos lead to incontrovertible proof these evil beings exist? Wildlife biologist Dr. Stephanie Shuttler analyzes the video and doesn't see much to support the skinwalker theory.
It looks like a man walking, but you don't really see any clothing. It seems to be like an all-gray figure. To me, it's strange that if they can make shapes into different animals, they seem very human-like, and it doesn't seem to resemble any animal in this area at all, or even any exotic animals.
And she says there's an even bigger red flag.
I also don't understand why the camera drops down. I understand they're scared, but if they're really interested in getting this, it seems like they would have the camera on the whole time.
Next, we take the video to science writer Mick West, who's fully willing to give it the benefit of the doubt.
It could actually be some kind of cryptid coming out of the foliage towards the car, but because it's such a low resolution video and because it's so highly compressed, we can't do the normal types of analysis that we do to see if there are indications of fakery.
Still, West isn't ready to call this a legitimate skinwalker. Instead, he offers up another theory.
Kind of see a shape suddenly appear out of the foliage, and it's amorphous, and it looks like a figure walking towards the road. If someone wanted to fake this, or someone was trying to scare somebody else, then you could very easily get this effect just by having somebody in a green camouflage suit and just kind of come out of the background. It is possible that there are some kind of strange creatures out there in the desert that we haven't discovered before, but this really isn't very good evidence of it. So I think I'm going to have to go with a guy in the suit.
We're going to go ahead and call these sightings a human, probably using some kind of camouflage like a ghillie suit. So no need to cancel your upcoming camping plans. But keep your eyes and ears open, and if something comes at you, well, we suggest you run away, just in case. June 2020, Wolf Island, Georgia. News breaks that a man named Jeff Warren has come across something extraordinary on the beach. Fortunately, he had his phone to record it. Take a good look. The video shows what looks like an odd, washed-up carcass. There appear to be some entrails nearby as if something took a bite out of it. To the rear, there is a long tail, maybe to help propulsion in the water. On the left side, we see what appears to be a flipper, and most interesting, what looks like a long, slender neck with a small reptilian head. So what is it? Cliff Barrickman has an idea.
The shape of it suggests a plesiosaur of some sort.
A plesiosaur is an ancient reptile that lived during the time of the dinosaurs. And for field researcher Ken Gerhardt, that is particularly exciting.
In and around the town of Darien, Georgia, in the Altamaha River, there have been accounts of a mysterious monster known as the Altamaha. It's typically described as a plesiosaurian type of animal. And like this creature, it fits well into the paradigm of other lake monsters and sea serpents around the world, similar to the Loch Ness Monster, Canada's Ogopogo, the Lake Champlain Monster in upstate New York, and so on.
The video hits the local news and soon goes viral, with many people claiming it must be the sea creature affectionately known as Alti to local Georgians. The legendary creature Altamahaha is said to have a small head, a long neck and tail, and flippers. That all seems to track. Could this video be proof that the ancient legend is real? Let's check with our experts. First off, marine biologist Dr. Shay Conger says that despite its similarities to Altamahaha, this creature bears resemblance to something more recognizable.
It's almost an exact replica of the cartilage of a basking shark. And these are often washed up on beaches and mistaken for sea monsters.
Growing up to 50 feet long, basking sharks are the second largest shark on Earth. When these giants decompose, they tend to first lose their lower head area, along with their dorsal and caudal fins. The result is a carcass that is easy to mistake for a plesiosaur or sea monster. However, Conger says this carcass doesn't quite add up.
If this were the cartilage structure of a basking shark, I would expect that it would be a lot rougher, it would be kind of whitish in color.
And in fact, when Dr. Conger examines the creature's state of decomposition, she doesn't see a marine animal at all. She smells a rat.
If this were an animal that was found on the beach, we would expect it to be somewhat decomposed. Instead, this animal is not decomposed at all, even though it appears to have some scratch marks around it. But there's also what appear to be entrails in front of it, and that's really not typical of the natural decomposition process. Based on the fact that it appears to be completely intact and not decomposed, I would conclude that this is a hoaxed or manufactured object.
We attempted to contact Jeff Warren, who filmed the video, but it turns out that was a made-up name, and he disappeared after sending the video to news agencies. So did the carcass. So we did some further investigating ourselves and found that this Altamahaha was actually a sculpture created by an artist who goes by the name Zardulu.
Appearance becomes meaningless in our presumption of truth.
Zardulu creates anonymous viral videos. You may be familiar with her earlier masterpieces, Pizza Rat and Raccoon Riding an Alligator. So the verdict here is clear. This is an artistically created hoax. We asked Zardulu for an interview. Unsurprisingly, she declined. She did direct us to her manifesto, which declares that she creates work for the world to enjoy. I hope you enjoyed it too.